All right, young scholars, today we are going to jump in and talk about some specifics from the two slide decks I have posted up on Blackboard. And then, if you saw, I just added now a GitHub link. We are going to import a project from GitHub and modify it. And maybe we'll get through all of that today. I'm not entirely sure. But if we don't finish it today, we'll finish it on Monday. So first, the Chapter 7 slide deck. I want to focus on slide number 7. You saw last week with views, there's different type of views we can create within the Android Studio. I want to focus on a grid view, which allows you to display multiple images or options to a user at the same time. You saw last week with the affirmations, we just set it up as one image at a time after our text that we put through. Whereas a grid view, you've probably seen it. You know, you might have 4 images on a row, 10 images. Well, think of like Instagram, right? You could see 3 images in a row at one time. That would be an example of a grid view. Now, within apps, your notifications are referred to as toast notifications. They're basically just alerts to the user. So you can set them within your code if you so chose. For example, say your app requires a user to enter information that you create for your group project. You might spit out a toast notification. Okay, we've recorded your email. Okay, your name is, and whatever their specific input would have been. Then within the Chapter 8 slide deck, I want to focus on what we've seen with this emulator. We've been using the emulator. If you published an app, it would be available and native to any device that it's installed on. So right now, excuse me, we're just using an emulator. Basically, we're replicating what we would see. But an actual app that's installed, whether it's on your laptop, your phone, it's native to that device. It's installed locally on your device. So if you thought your app that you created was great for the group project, you might decide to push it out onto the Google Play Store, and people might have the opportunity to download it and have it be native on their device. You can also set up date, time, and clock components. As you saw in the emulator, it always displays what today's date is. You could do that with your app as well, if you so choose. With these components, date, time, and clock, it gives the app more of a real-time feel. You go on a website, it displays like what day it is, what time it is. It gives you a sense of, oh, okay, this is more up to date. Because sometimes not every website or app is going to be like ESPN.com, where it's updated like 12 times a day. There's a different header, different articles every time you go onto it. And lastly, you might have a theme associated with it. So the big thing now is artificial intelligence. So a lot of companies are starting to gear their designs towards computers, robots, that type of thing. Other apps specifically have themes in mind when they create the app, like Candy Crush. Everything's designed with candy in mind. There's a dating app called Bumble. Everything is designed based off of the theme of bees. So, it's our hive. It's buzz around, etc. So when you create a theme like that, it helps you, I guess, with your design. So Candy Crush, everything's revolving around candy. So it could be lollipops, it could be bubble gum, etc. Now, the more interesting the theme you have, that might get more users hooked. Okay, so you see here on Blackboard, we have this GitHub link for today. So go ahead and open that. And you would do code. And right here where it gives you the HTTPS, go ahead and copy that. And then when you're in Android Studio, create a new project. Phone and tablet, empty activity, next. It doesn't matter what you call it, so just go ahead and finish. Because once it starts building, or is finished building, all we're going to do is file, create new project. And we're going to create the project from version control and post that GitHub link. So you can either check in the bottom right-hand corner here, where it tells you the status of the build, or once all the project files populate on the left-hand side, you'll know that you're ready to go. And then, as I said, you'd go to File, New, Project from Version Control, and you would paste that URL that I have listed for you on Blackboard. This GitHub link for 1011, you'd click on that. It would open the TV Code Labs. You'd select code and copy this URL. Then paste and go ahead and select clone. Hopefully, since you downloaded GitHub previously, it will load fairly quickly. And you'll see here that we have all sorts of different files already set up for us. So the first thing you want to see is when you open the app and Java folder, we have an app.kt and a main activity file. The app.kt, if you open that, creates our navigation. This app is basically going to do, once we fix it and build on it, is create an instance where, if you see components under UI folder, we've created a movie card. The idea is, if this actually loads, which in our experience, we may not count on that, but then there's also screens. There's going to be certain movies that would be displayed based on categories. And you see in the drawable folder, this placeholder.png will be what populates for all of the movie background images. So what we have to do is we now have to create screens that will allow us to navigate all of our information. So if you right-click TV Compose Introduction, you're going to add a new file called catalog browser.kt. You might have a warning error pop up. Go ahead and click Add. Here we're going to add the code that will allow us to display the category names for the movies, display the content list for each category, and create a vertical view. So we need to add quite a bit of imports into our code in order for us to do that. So first we import Android X compose.foundation.layout.arrangement. That allows us to set up how the view will be arranged. Then we import Android X compose.foundation.layout.padding values. That allows us to create padding, spacing in between the left and right and top and bottom as we need. Next, we import Android X.compose.runtime.composable. That allows the view to be created or composed in real time. Then we import Android X.compose.runtime.collect as state. That allows us to pass the variables through, or in this case, the movie titles, just as they are. Then we need to import Android X, .compose, .runtime, .get value, which allows us to transport the value from one area of our documents to another, catalog, details, etc. Then we import Android X, .compose, .ui, .modifier. That allows us to use the modifier, which allows us to create new objects or instances from the user interface class. Then we import Android X, .compose, .ui, .unit, .dp, which now allows us to use display pixels. Then import Android X, .lifecycle, .viewModel, .compose, .viewModel. But the second one, the M is capitalized. That allows us to open and end the view display based on the time we need it to show up. So if we look at it for 5 seconds, that's its lifespan. Next, import Android X, .tv, .foundation, .lazy, .list, .tv, lazy column. That is an import that's already created for use of this specific project. And similarly, we need to import the lazy list for the row. So import Android X.tv.foundation.lazy.list.tv lazy row. Then we have to import our list items. So now we've imported all potential available categories for our movies, our specific categories. Next, we import Android X, TV, material 3, experimental TV, material 3 API. And again, those are all created specifically for this project. Then we import Android X.tv, .material 3, .text. Now we're going to import example.tv compose introduction.data.movie. So we're importing data from the movie.kt class that we've created. And last but not least, as you see here, we have this movie card.kt. We now import everything from that using UI components movie card. So you see there quite a bit. And literally 5 of these were created just for use of this specific program. So now we have to opt in to get our materials from this API. So we do opt in, parentheses, experimental excuse me. So you need to opt in to that experimental TV material API. But in order to do that, you need 2 colons and then class, which allows us to opt in to that imported package or class. How did I insert the link again, Professor? So if you go to File, New, Project from Version Control, right where it says URL here, you'd post or paste the URL and click on Clone. So after we've opted in, we now use that composable. Then we need to create a function. We'll call it Catalog Browser. And within our function, we're going to use that modifier class. Modifier equals modifier. Then we're going to use our view model. So catalog browser, view model, colon, catalog browser, view model equals view model parentheses. We're creating a new instance or object of a view model in order to display our catalog. Next, on movie selected, movie, minus, less than, unit, equals, an empty set of brackets. And then after our closing parenthesis, we have an open bracket. We're now going to create a value called category list and pass it through using the word by to our catalog browser view model. We add the category list and we use collect as state, which, as I mentioned earlier, allows us to pass a specific variable through as it's set up. So then after that, we import our column. So we have TV lazy column within the parentheses, modifier equals modifier. We set up a vertical arrangement which is going to be spaced by 16 display pixels. Then we're going to set up our padding. In this case, we'll set horizontal as 48 display pixels and vertical as 32 display pixels. It doesn't necessarily matter what size you create for them. You just want to make sure that the pictures are visible. We have to do the same now for our items. Pass through the category list. Category minus less than. And now we're going to pass the text through by passing through the category name. Now to match our column, we also need to create our row now. Which now we're going to set the horizontal arrangement. Our column was the vertical arrangement. Our row is the horizontal arrangement. We do the same thing as we did before. However, in this instance, we'll have this space as 8 display pixels. We then need to create another items, this time to pass the entire movie list through. Movie minus less than. We then take our movie card and pass a movie through by doing movie equals movie. And then down the bottom here, to know that you've closed everything correctly, you should have 5 closing brackets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this now allows us to display our catalog. Say you like action movies, it would display all of those action movies. You like horror movies, it would display all of those horror movies. So next, we need to create a file called details. So again, go back, right-click TV Compose Intro, create a new file, and call it details.kt. That gives you the warning error. Go ahead and click Add. So this will allow us to display the movie title, studio name, description, and background image if it exists. So if it doesn't exist, like I showed you earlier, it's just going to show this placeholder. Because that's the only image we have within Drawable, all of them are going to display that specific placeholder value. So we don't have as many imports for details as we did for Catalog Browser, but we do have a few. The first one allows us to create the specific layout that we'd like. So we're going to put each of our images within a box. We then need to import the column
Professor?
layout. Yes.
This is just like a random question, but if I wanted the layout to be in like a circular shape, I could put like circle, or would that be something different?
You would do that.
Oh, okay.
You would just change the import from box to circle.
All right, thank you.
So some people, like I mentioned with Instagram, it's most common that you'll have just that box set up. But you could do circle, triangle, as long as the import is available. You've set it up to be imported. So now we have to import set up to be able to fill all of that space we set up previously in the catalog browser. Whatever it was, 18 by 9 display pixels to fill that entire area. Next, we're going to import our padding again. Our composable again. Our modifier again. Every time you're using this, if it's a different file, you have to include all of the imports. So then we're going to import our layout content scale, which allows it to display based on your phone's scale. So you may have a bigger phone, it displays a bigger. On a mobile device, apps look different, let's say on your tablet, than they would on your phone. So that's the scale. We then import our display pixels again. And all of those TV materials, as we did with the previous file. To allow us to use all of the information from those in our different files. Just pass them through. Then we import this coil.compose async image that allows our loading screen to synchronize with whatever images we have. So as I explained, we only have this placeholder. So all of these will simply show that placeholder. And lastly, we import our data from the movie.kt file within our data folder. So just as we did previously, we now have to opt in to this API, this experimental TV material 3 API. So it's at opt in. Experimental TV material 3 API, : class, which allows us to import that package. We're now able to use it. And just as before, at composable. And now we're going to create a function that passes the details of the movie. So fun for function. We call the details. We'll do movie : movie, comma, modifier, : capital modifier equals capital modifier. Apologies, young scholars. Still a bit under the weather, as I'm sure you've heard. So then we add a bracket and create a box function. Which we now fill the max size of. If you had imported circle above, you would set that as circle. So then we add brackets after that. And we use the async image. Parentheses. We create a new model. Which is now going to look for any potential image related to that movie. We'll then do content description equals null because we're going to be importing it. So right now it's missing. Then our content scale will equal content scale dot crop. This way, like I said, it'll be able to scale down to whatever display you're using, whether it be a phone, a tablet. It'll crop it, make it smaller based on the device that you're using. And then lastly, we set that modifier to now fill max size, just as we did within our box function. So now we're going to create our column. We do modifier equals modifier. Dot padding. We're going to set the vertical to 32 dp and the horizontal to 48 display pixels. This way, we match the same as we did before. Now we're going to have brackets and create text. So text, then parentheses within the parentheses. The text equals movie, a title, comma, and the style equals material theme, typography, headline medium, which gives us the display. We want the name of that movie to be bigger text size. Next, we create another text. This time, we want the studio. Who made the movie? Actually, we want the movie title to be the largest. So we do headline large. We want our studio display to be medium. We don't necessarily care how big the studio name is. And then lastly, we create another text. And we again pass the movie title. However, this time, make it smaller. So this way, we'll have the movie title in big text, everybody can see it. And then who created the movie and the movie title again in smaller text below it.
Professor, you misspelled theme wrong twice.
I did, yes. So it's material theme, not material them. Thank you. And you make sure at the bottom, you should have 3 closing brackets to close everything out. So think of it like a web page. You know, you might have the big header at the top, and then below it might be the same exact thing, but in smaller text. So now we have to jump back in to that catalog browser file that we created and create screens. We have to visually be able to display this information. So we go back into the catalog browser.kt. And after movie card movie equals movie, we add a comma, then unclick equals within brackets on movie selected. And then within parentheses, movie. That now allows us, basically think of like your Netflix. You're able to click left and right to go through the different suggestions. That's what that unclick is now going to allow us to do. So last but not least, you now have to add a carousel, which allows us to display those different images and transition from one screen to another in our view. So even though you thought we had quite a bit of imports already, we have to add a few more. First, we import Android X .compose .foundation .clickable, which allows us to click through and modify, or actually not modify, click through and navigate through our different options. Next, we import Android X compose foundation .layout .fill max size, just as we did in the details.kt. Then we're going to import fill max width, which will allow the images to show up in the width that we've set. Then we're going to import height. So that will keep whatever image we have available within a restricted area. I'm sure if you've gone on to any web page where there's a lot of images, it takes forever to load if they're big. But if they're little thumbnails, again, like Instagram, for example, it's fairly easy for them to load. Next, we're going to import our content scale again, just as we did with the details.kt. Next, we're going to import Android X, compose, .ui, .res, .painter resource. That will allow us to display any of our images, plopping them up in the view. Obviously, if we're creating a carousel, we have to import the carousel class. So in this instance, we're taking it, it's set up specific for this project, tv.material3.carousel. We also have to import the async image, as we did with details.kt. And lastly, import our TV compose introduction.r. R represents any kind of variable you might want to pass. As you saw, R dot affirmation 1, R dot image 1 with our previous examples. So above our items category list here, we're going to press enter and add in item brackets. And we're going to create a value called featured movie list and pass it using by catalog browser view model. Featured movie list and collect as state, which allows us to pass that variable as it is. Then we create our carousel. Carousel parentheses, slide count equals featured movie list dot size. Modifier equals modifier dot fill max width. Dot height. We're going to set it to 376 display pixels. That will now allow it to show you as many possible options within whatever your width is and your height of 376 display pixels. So after that carousel, we're now going to create an index of our carousel items. So we create a value. The featured movie equals featured movie list. Index of carousel item. Creates an array list of our information, of our images, our videos, our movies. Then we have to create a carousel slide. So background equals the asynchronous image. Our model equals featured movie. Background image URL. Our content description equals null. And then if we can't find an image, we use that placeholder image, placeholder.png. So the ID is set equal R drawable placeholder. If we can't find an image online for the movie, we just use that placeholder image instead. Then we add a comma and we set our content scale, just as we did in the other example, to be cropped. And then we create a modifier that's going to fill the max size. So after our closing parentheses there, we add a closing bracket, comma, modifier equals modifier dot clickable. Open bracket on movie selected. Parentheses, featured movie. And double check to see that that has been closed out. Your bracket here should match the bracket below. Then we close our carousel slide by adding the closing parenthesis, and we create an open bracket. And now we pass our text through. Text equals feature movie title. And if you have an extra closing parenthesis here, you can go ahead and delete it. You should have just 1, 2, 3 closing brackets below that. Unfortunately, however, since this is downloaded and cloned from GitHub, it's not going to officially run for us and display that. But as I explained, it basically run or look like if we had it fully set up with all of our movie inputs like you would have on, let's say, your Netflix account. You know, you might have a search for horror and it would show you, let's say, 15 suggestions, and it would have you have the availability to scroll through and look through each of the specific options within those categories. So for before next class on Monday, you have this homework assignment number 4, where you're asked to provide a 1-paragraph response on which app store you prefer to use, Google Play, Apple Store, etc., and why. If you've used more than one, describe why you prefer one to the other. You can also get apps through Amazon, Microsoft Store. I believe Microsoft Store is usually tied with the Xbox, though. I believe they're trying to bring it to mobile devices, your cell phones. There's also, for example, the PlayStation Store, where you can download games, etc. So you're more than welcome to discuss any of them, especially if you used more than one of them, and indicate why you'd prefer one over the other. Like I also indicated on the announcement on Monday, when I wasn't feeling that great, in next week's folder here, you'll see app number 2. That just requires you to modify the affirmations app we created, but instead of just 10 random affirmations, have it be 10 facts about yourself, and you'd submit the code for the updated strings.xml with those 10 facts about yourself and a screenshot of the updated view with the 10 facts and the 10 images. Like I said, if you can't get it to display, just go ahead and copy, 1 or 2 of the facts about yourself on top of whatever images you chose in, let's say, Microsoft Paint or whatever. So let's say one of the facts about yourself is I like dogs. You might just copy that text and put it on top of a picture of a dog within Microsoft Paint. That would be perfectly fine. So if there are no questions, go ahead and enjoy the rest of your week and your weekends. And those of you that have programming too, I'll see you tomorrow. The rest of you, I will see you on Monday.